for you, entertainment in the form of a tourism case study. Northern Idaho is absolutely sensational. And if you haven't really explored it, you owe it to yourself to do so. I was telling my team the story yesterday that I've got a very good friend I went to law school with. He actually became a successful lawyer, and he worked very, very hard and was very successful and has a lake house at Lake Ponderay up in Sandpoint. And I visited him this summer, and it was sensational. It was beautiful. I just had the best time. But after a couple days, I was starting to think maybe I made a mistake, because I started hearing this refrain from my wife: why can't we have a $2 million house on the lake? Why can't we go pick huckleberries in the afternoon and paddleboard in the morning? Through the Northern Idaho Tourism Alliance, our 12 communities are working together to capitalize on this region's incredible assets. It's spectacular scenery, it's access to outdoor recreation, it's rich local history. So our presenters today are going to discuss how their communities have evolved and how collaboration is helping to build a more vibrant economic future in Northern Idaho. So Stephanie Sims is the Executive Director of the International Selkirk Loop and also serves as the NITA Board Chair. And Colleen Rosson is the Executive Director of the Silver Valley Economic Development Corporation and the NITA Board Vice Chair. And I will leave it to you too. Thank you very much.
So the International Selkirk Loop is essentially a highway. It's a 280-mile loop of highway that encircles the Selkirk mountain range in northern Idaho, eastern Washington, and southeastern British Columbia. We are frequently referred to as a two-nation vacation. So it was essentially the brainchild of a couple tourism business individuals who are trying to figure out, how do we get people to come visit our area and help our economies. The primary purpose of this organization, it's a nonprofit in both countries, is to enhance those local economies. And I have almost 45 communities along this route. So as the route passes through, we're essentially just bringing tourists to their communities, hoping that they will stop, enjoy the area, and leave some tourism dollars behind. So this is essentially the map. The red oval in the middle is the main designated route. That's the 280-mile route. The lower, like about 5 o'clock, is our largest U.S. community of Sandpoint, Idaho. And at about 11 o'clock is the largest Canadian community, which is Nelson, BC. They are sister cities, so there's a lot of cross-promotion between them. When it was first designated, the travelers were coming and spending 1 or 2 days. When they added the 6 super side trips, which are the colored loops on the outside of it, travelers are now coming 3 to 5 days, and they're staying also as long as 1 to 2 weeks. So this was first formed in U.S. in 1998 as a nonprofit, and then as a nonprofit society in 2001 in Canada. The very important part of this is we are governed by a board of directors that are represented from all around the loop. So each of these communities has someone there speaking for them, helps me stay current on what's happening, and they all have a voice. Without that, we would very quickly fail. We have over 340 members supporting businesses around the loop. Most of those are tourism organizations, but some are not. I also have real estate agents who recognize people are going to see the beauty of the area and want to move. So there's a wide range of people. And we're also recognized as a model of cooperation between 2 states and 2 countries for a common goal. Even though they're competing for those same dollars, you won't see that competition when they're working together at the table. For the Canadian side, it was pretty easy. You just took that loop of highway and applied for a scenic driving route, is what they call them there, or a circle route, and it was done. On the US side, it was a bit more complicated. Each section of highway has to be applied to its state for a state scenic byway. So the top two are Washington scenic byways for the portion that falls in Washington, which is Medellin Falls, Medellin, Ione, down to Newport. And then the bottom two are US. We then could take those 4 scenic byways and string them together and apply for a national scenic byway in Washington, D.C. And you have to have pretty strict intrinsic qualities in order to qualify for that. Not only did we make the National Scenic Byway status, but we also reached the All-American Road status, and we're only one of 32 All-American roads in the U.S. We are the only one that is recognized internationally, so there are 2 countries promoting the same thing. This program just reopened this year, so you might see some more coming through, so keep that in mind as well. So there's a whole marketing side to this. I could give a presentation just on this piece, so I just wanted you to see there's a whole bunch of moving parts to make this happen and get the travelers to come, and how we handle that is in a variety of ways to support them as they're coming through. We also, about every 5 years, do a pretty in-depth survey of who our traveler is so that we can do the best job on marketing it. We can provide supporting materials for collateral. If they're looking to go hiking, we want to make sure we have that. Who are they? How old are they? Where should I be advertising? What type of traveler do we have? So one of them I wanted to share with you is that they're coming in their personal vehicle primarily. That is your average car. It is not a high clearance vehicle, so if you're going to be sending them to the public lands, you need to be able to get there in your minivan or in your average 4-door sedan. The bicycles and the motorcycles will not leave the paved roads. They want to stay on pavement. And your RV might have a high clearance, but it might be also towing a small car behind it. So again, you're down to those special cars. We want to know what they're doing when they're here. And the reason for that is everything that's on this list, we have something that goes with it to support it, to help them stay in the area longer. And it's specifically designed to get them to move around this loop and visit all of these different communities. The economic impact of our most recent survey was just over 5,300 people, and it's over $4.8 million that they were leaving behind in these areas. How many people come is the hardest number for us to quantify because we don't have a door that they're crossing through. They're not buying a pass, and so that's difficult. But using different counters that we use through the highways, the border crossings, the businesses that they're visiting, a conservative number is about 25,000 people a year are coming. So we could take that number and multiply it quite a few times in order to see the actual economic impacts. With all of that data, I'm also able to partner with our communities in order to get projects. And sometimes that is a city, sometimes that's a county, the Forest Service, the highways, and it will get grant dollars in order to improve a trail. It might be to expand a road, it'll get walking paths, interpretive signs. So there's a wide variety of ways that I can provide data on who the traveler is, what they're looking for, what is missing, so that these communities and things can apply for dollars and get improvement projects in the area to help with economic development. One of our biggest pushes lately has been car chargers, and that is in part mostly because of my BC partners. They have a highway going across Canada that they call the Electric Highway. And every one of those small communities is installing car chargers to pull those travelers out of the large cities and into their rural communities. I had no car chargers on the US side, so I couldn't pull them south. And so we started with our largest community in Sandpoint, and we now have 3 car chargers there. I have one in one of my super side trips in Washington, and Bonners Ferry just got approval for some funding for them for theirs. Theirs is unique. It's coming from Volkswagen, one of the settlements there. So if there's anyone here on Medellin Falls to Newport, that's where my hole is now. And so that's where we'll be focusing next, is to get some car chargers in that area. So I'm sure many of you have some sort of tourism funding, and some of ours comes from the 2% lodging tax. So when you stay in a hotel, a bed and breakfast, a campground, maybe a vacation rental, you're paying a 2% tax on that, called a lodging tax. And that gets paid into the state, and then 45% of it is available for funding to come back in grants that you can then use to hopefully repeat the cycle. Advertise your area, get a traveler to come and spend the night. So NITA is what we call it, North Idaho Tourism Alliance. It's 11 small rural communities and a couple nonprofits got together to apply for these grants as one unit, and that's called NITA. And their purpose, again, is to increase those overnight stays and hopefully promote intra-region travel within the state and within those rural communities. When I first came on board, what I noticed coming from the Selkirk Loop is where I have all these communities working together for a common goal. What I noticed at first with NITA is it was a lot of taking their money and doing their own independent work, which sometimes worked really well, and sometimes they were working against each other. You're advertising in the same publication for the same thing, but they're going in different directions. So my focus has been to try to get them to find those common denominators between them and pool their money and set a goal and work together with that. So with that, we did a Visit Rural Idaho campaign, which was primarily with search engine, with those keywords for Google. And then we would stalk you if you interacted with our ad, and we would keep popping up and follow you around to try to get you to come back. Focusing on outdoor recreation that all of these rural communities have. Many of them are located hours from each other, but they have that same common denominator of the outdoor recreation. Since this campaign went in place 3 years ago, the last 2 years that tax has increased from 30 to 71% in those rural communities. So it's clearly working, and it's a great success for these small communities. One of the greatest assets that I think Northern Idaho has is the Trail of the Coeur d'Alenes. We have hundreds, literally hundreds of trails. This one is unique, however, in the fact that it's extremely long, but it's paved, which is not unusual for a large community, but it's extremely unusual for a small community to have a paved trail. And this is paved in the countryside in between the rural communities as well. So it's a perfect way to get travelers to come in a wide variety of ages, young and old. You can now use e-bikes on this, so you can get even a wider stance. It extends through 3 counties in Region 1, multiple rural communities. It's been designated as an Idaho State Park, so you're getting that promotion through the park as well. And then it's maintained by both the park and the Coeur d'Alene tribe. So that is the epitome of what a small rural community is looking for. They don't have to drum up volunteers. They don't have to look for funding to keep it open. All of that's happening through other organizations, and they just need to promote it to get the travelers to come. So one of my goals was there were communities promoting that trail, but again, working independently and separate from each other. So my goal was to set aside some funding. These communities had to work together. They had to come up with what their goals were, make a plan, have a return on investment on how to measure that at the end. And the result of that, they came up with 6 different campaigns that stretched over a 9-month period, starting with fat bike riding in the winter, in the snow, and it ended with fall colors in this last fall. We did several advertorials, which is a paid story, and it's essentially takes a family and they have an adventure, and you get to read about it and see what they did. There were some online newsletters, some ads, a little social media that went with it. We now have one cohesive map, instead of each community having their own map in different directions. And that map was integrated onto the website. Another caveat that I included with this is that Idaho State Parks had to be at the table. If you're promoting an entity, you need to make sure that that entity is in agreement with what you're putting out there, that they have a chance to prove it, and they get a chance to have a voice in order to keep that positive reinforcement. So this is the map that was integrated into the website. It is interactive, so each of the communities that has lodging, you can click on it and see the lodging that's available. And I believe the Idaho State Parks might be using it as a print collateral in the future. And then elevating that just once more, the Rails to Trails Conservancy's promotion is to have a trail that goes all the way across the United States called the Great American Rail Trail. And the section in North Idaho, this Trail of the Coeur d'Alenes, is now a part of that. So again, it puts you to another level. Another organization is promoting you. It doesn't cost you any money. And those rural communities benefit from it. So now I'll turn this over to Colleen.
Figure out how to work this. Perfect. So I would like to, just as a side note, really emphasize what a amazing thing that NITA does for all of these organizations. It's not only a funding mechanism, it is also a mentorship and an ability for everybody to get together and share best practices and understand what works and what doesn't and why, and bounce ideas off of each other to really do the best with the minimal amounts of money that we have and the extremely limited staff. So I would like to jump into a little bit of a flashback and talk about the changing economy. I'll talk about Shoshone County because that's kind of my expertise. This picture that you see on here is the smelter when everything was great and wonderful. There was JCPenney's, there was Sears, there was Safeways, and everybody loved to live here. But there was, like with anything, if you have 100 years of anything, it has to change. We'd been mining for over 100 years in Shoshone County, and things had started to change. So the 3 that I highlighted here were just really kind of the culmination of a lot of things, the declining infrastructure in the facilities, the hostile takeover. But in 1980, the Hunt brothers decided that they had this clever idea to corner the market on silver. And in a 4-day period, they tanked out the value of silver by 50%. We're a predominantly silver producing area. In 1981, because of all of these things that had happened leading up to that, the smelter closed, Bunker Hill closed. Uncle Bunker was no longer there for us. That was 2,300 jobs immediately. And in 1983, just to cap it all off and add a little salt to that wound, we were designated a Superfund site. That's not all bad. But that just that was really just an immediate decline. So we're an old county now. We've got new problems. But it's also the same old story, boom to bust. Now what do we do? So we decided that we'd be creative and start to capitalize on that. This picture here, so I'm going to take a little bunny trail on that. This is the same site a few decades apart. They're taken from opposite sides of the hillside. But this is where the smelter was. We had a very clever forester that lived in the area who hybridized some trees and ironically enough grew those seedlings in the Bunker Hill mine site that had caused that devastation. And then he integrated the community into this and had, as the high school kids did a lot of the planting of the seedlings. So you can see the huge effort that the innovation, the collaboration, and then involving the community created there. So with the designation of the Superfund site, one of the things was, how do you redevelop this? That's not a very good marketing tool to say, hey, come settle here. We're a Superfund site. We're highly contaminated with lead. It's not what you put on your brochures. So the Institutional Controls Program, this was developed with multiple agencies coming together and understanding that we have to protect the remediation that's been going on in this area. Billions of dollars have been put into the Bunker Hill Superfund site to make sure that it's cleaned up and is habitable and progresses forward. There are champions, and they have come together to facilitate how ease the process of going through developing in a Superfund site. It's not the easiest thing, but they are genuinely a one-stop shop. They are kind of a unique program, and my understanding there's not another one like it in the nation. They do, while nobody really likes to have, red tape and government, they do make it a rule. So it's not a voluntary process to work with the ICP. It is something that you have to do, but it's for the betterment of the community. So the two examples, there are actually some successes of expansion projects and new projects that were a part of the ICP. The Shoshone Medical Center, rural health is extremely important, and we have a fantastic little medical center there. They helped to facilitate some of the expansion that was done there. And then Smelterville Flats, that's kind of ground zero. That's where the smelter was. There were 3 businesses brought in that, as you can see, they produce wages and exports. So one of our top shining star for the ICP program was Silver Mountain. So we had Jackass Ski Bowl there. They're about 53 years since it started. And then the community of Kellogg, so another bunny trail, sorry, wanted to find a way to really kind of revitalize the area. And so they decided they needed to put in a gondola. So they got together, the community passed a bond, Kellogg put in money, the state of Idaho put in money, rural development money, and the tram company that installed this was so impressed with the collaborative that they ponied up quite a bit of money to finish this as well. So Kellogg is now the home of the longest straight line gondola in North America. That's a fantastic asset to have. Until you go to a developer and say, we have an existing ski hill. We have the longest straight line gondola in North America. We're 2 blocks off the interstate. You don't have those treacherous roads to get up to our ski hill. But you are on ground zero. You're in a Superfund site, and right across the road is a 200-acre slag pile. Come on in, develop. Let's see how this goes. So as you can imagine, that wasn't an easy sell. But when Eagle Crest came in, the ICP worked with them. They were able to get through that process. And now we have Silver Mountain, which is a destination location. They have over 170,000 visitors in a year, 275 employees. They're year-round. They've expanded into biking and hiking. They do national qualifier races. I'm trying to keep this on just the bicycle tourism. I could go on and on about everything that we have to offer in the area. They also host national qualifier races for this. This brings hundreds of competitors into town and all of their entourage and visitors and spectators with that. I did want to highlight the Leadman Triathlon. So when you have some events like this, don't hide from it. Embrace it. So we host, not an Ironman, a Leadman Triathlon. It's also a shoulder season, which is fantastic. This is the time when the snow, it's not any good to ski on. There's too much mud to do the biking. So what are you going to do with this? Well, let's throw an event. let's bring everybody in and enjoy this slushy snow and nasty mud and, give them a trophy at the end of that. So the Leadman is just a way to embrace the culture, create an event, and move forward with the tourism. There we go. Really the shining star of solutions when it comes to our site, our Superfund site, is the Trail of Coeur d'Alene's. So it was another one of those. 1991, the rail line was abandoned. Great. What do? We've got this great swath of land. Nobody wants to deal with it. It's highly contaminated. So another group of collaborative people got together with some really innovative solutions and incorporated 13 agencies as well as the community and grassroots organization that got this started. And they capped it. So they created this 73.2-mile trail that runs from border to border. And it immediately became a destination. There was a newspaper article about Harrison, a little community that was really struggling during that time. The trail was dedicated in 2004, so just prior to that, it was completed. But Harrison immediately saw cars coming into town with bicycles on it. The espresso shop owner was just tickled pink because his sales immediately was doubling. And Harrison's a great little community, but it's a small community, and you have to be intentionally going there. So it created this recreation opportunity, this destination for people to come to, but it also is a transportation system for our local residents. So the community impact of what this was, it connects all of the communities. This is a safe transportation system. You can get on and off of this trail anywhere. It has incredibly easy access. It created green spaces and community areas where you can have events. The accessibility is, as Stephanie said, it is anybody. It doesn't matter your mobility, your interests. You can walk, you can rollerblade, you can do anything you want to on this. And it also created some event centers. One of the fun stories that I have with the event center and specific to the trail is Wallace. So when the freeway was coming through, they decided they really didn't want the freeway to take out the middle of their town. And when you're in a mountain community, you don't have a lot of options to change where that freeway goes. So Harry Magnuson put an injunction that halted the construction of the freeway. When he was done, they had designated most of the buildings in Wallace as historic places. And so you now could not come in and raise the community, put in a freeway and say, good luck with that. They had to put that freeway up and over Wallace. And that also facilitated that the entire town of Wallace is on the National Historic Registry. But the freeway going over, that created an outdoor event center. So you now have covered parking. Almost the entire trail through Wallace is covered. They have events all year round because you don't have to worry about the rain and the snow going through it. But that's some of the fantastic happy byproducts of the Trail of the Coeur d'Alene's being created. It also creates a pride in place. The community owns this. They have access to this. There are volunteers that just come in and do maintenance along the trail because they love their section of the trail. So it's an amazing community place. It also has historic preservation. So there's a lot of signage along the trail that talks about the history of the mining and the history of the area. What does this have to do with revitalizing small communities? I love this graphic. So I came across this, a couple that sold everything and decided they were going to bike the United States. This is a representation of the same 200-mile journey in a car versus a bicycle. The economic impact of bicycle tourism in small communities is incredible. These numbers that I have here come from the Trail of the Coeur d'Alene's, from the park. This is the 2019 numbers so far. And as Stephanie said, it's very hard to track people. The trail has counters that are set out, but they miss some of the really popular trails like Bull Run and Pine Creek. So when we go through and look at the numbers and talking with Kathleen, we came up with a conservative number of 180,000 riders just in 2019. We had 159 other mobility permits. The reason I put that in there is, again, it's an accessibility. So up until about 2 weeks ago, if you had any kind of a motor, you had to have a permit to ride the trail. So this is from pedal assist bikes to wheelchairs, to motorized wheelchairs. Last year, they only had 49. This year, they had 159. So it's gaining some serious traction, and it has that accessibility feature. There were 12 group use permits. A group is at least 50 participants in this, and it's an organized, but it's not a supported event. There were 9 concessionaires. This is the supported, so you pay a fee, $1,200 or on up, and it's a fully supported ride. They had 15 special events. Typically that is a community event or a fundraiser that goes along the trail. And they had 14 construction projects. So outside of tourism, this is actual jobs that were supported through the Trail of the Coeur d'Alenes. What this means in money. If I can get that going. There we go. So Hall of Fame Trail. This is a Rails to Trails Conservancy Shining Star Trail. The group rides that I talked about that have at least 50 with it, they're not organized and the people support themselves. We did a survey of a group that had 94 riders in it, and they were very fantastic to keep track of the spending that they had in the communities. They rode for 4 days in the community. Some of them camped, some of them stayed in lodging. The average was $160 a day spend for these bicyclists. So the direct impact was $60,000. There was all kinds of other things that came from that. The school offered up their lawns so that the campers could camp there. They donated money to that. Hurried up. Okay. So the Ride Idaho, that's a supported one. They charged anywhere from $1,200 to $2,000 per rider. That's a fully supported ride. They actually put that back into the community, $2,000 or 2/3 of that. So the community does have a direct benefit. And on that 7-day ride, it was an estimated $420,000. So just conservative numbers, and specific to the Trail of the Coeur d'Alenes, $25 million a year of bicycle tourism and tourism related to the trails comes back into the economy. One other thing I wanted to highlight on this is Kellogg also really started understanding what tourism can do for the infrastructure, and they incorporated a lodging option tax. They put 3.5% on the beds only in Kellogg, which is under 400 beds. And in 2018, they had $180,000 that came from that 3.5% tax that they have in the bank, that they're going to be able to support the infrastructure, keep the roads going that they have. And with that, am I on time? Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, ladies. Could I bring up the panel on outdoor recreation now? Got it. Okay, and